Alright, let's make some coffee.
Yeah, let's do it. Good morning, guys. Welcome to episode 4 of Coffeehouse. So glad you guys could make it here today. Today we've got a Mexican... I don't call this a blend.
Mexico.
Just Mexico.
Single origin.
Single origin from Mexico. And I'm excited about this. I have always loved Mexican culture.
Freshly ground.
There's a reason why it's called Kendamas. I mean, we love the place. And the tasting notes, I mean, I'm just so excited about this. It's a medium roast, which I prefer, as opposed to the dark, I think we did with the Sumatra. And then,
yeah.
As the time this is aired, we've had an episode between, and I can't remember if that was the last was a medium roast or light or dark. I don't think we even knew, but
yeah, we didn't know that one. If I had to guess, it would have been dark.
Yeah. So the tasting notes on this is nutty, which it's kind of funny. When Chad was getting ready to blend it off camera, I got a nice whiff of the beans. I was like, man, that's such an earthy, like nutty smell, and that's exactly what it was. And I just had to brag real quick. The show is making me an expert. And then we've also got malted chocolate. Once again, love the chocolate.
Love the chocolate.
So we'll see. And then we've got a mellow and once again medium. So this is going to be good. It was roasted not that long ago, about a week ago, and so it's nice and fresh. And we are getting in on the French press action as we speak.
Yeah, 4 minutes on the clock.
Get that towel. Dough. And today, what I wanted to talk about was kendama product design. How we've spent our time figuring out how to make what we want to make and how we've come up with the ideas for it and that kind of thing. And you guys are very interested in the idea of kendama design.
A lot of people.
And I know that a lot of people have done it themselves, at least in contests and that kind of thing. And so you've already got this on the very basic level, like what it means to design a kendama. And whenever we first got started, we were pretty thoughtful about what exactly we wanted to make. And it was a conversation we had over several weeks. And it was actually like one of the main reasons why we even started to begin with, is because we felt like there was something missing. And I'm going to let Chad talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, so I've been playing kendama at that point for 4 years. And of course sponsored by Kendama Co. And at that point had sold kendamas from several different brands, had bought wholesale and been selling them. And funny story, I was slapping stickers on street signs, things around the University of Kentucky's campus, sorry UK, and Shelton's like, dude, you're doing all this work for different brands, why don't we start our own? And so that kind of sparked the conversation for starting Soul Kendamas. And we didn't just want to start by making something that had been around or available already. And one thing that people were doing with the Kendama USA Cherry Pro models was shaving the paint off the tamas to have this beautiful natural setup, this full natty setup with a wood that wasn't just beech.
Right.
And so that inspired us to start out with 3 different natty kendamas. We had solid beech, solid cherry, and then solid maple. And so that's how we initially started Soul Kendamas, by making natty kendamas, because at the time the only natty kendamas you could get were like a natty Azora or a natty TK16.
That sounds right to me. Or maybe natty beech.
Or just solid natty beech. Yeah. And of course we had to have that just because it was a classic, a staple in,
it was a staple
in kendama. And the cherry was definitely our, like what we were banking on being the most popular out of those 3. It was the maple for sure.
Maple was, and you guys know how maple is. I don't need to explain it to you.
Yeah, but at the time, like, even a natty maple, I think there were natty maples. Homegrown had been creating natty maples, but nobody had done the full natty cherry. And so that's, to us, that was
we were
like,
thinking that's gotta be
our thing. But
yeah.
Man, maple really took off and kind of stepped in and took over what beech initially had.
And I love that's like kind of how we had our start, because in terms of like, we're talking about product design,
Yeah.
All natty. It's like
there's really no design to it.
What do we do?
Take the design
Nothing
away.
at all. Yeah.
Here are these very refined pro models with like this paint, like engravings. Like, let's take all that away and strip it down to the like.
And it's kind of, and it wasn't like just like also it's a funny thing or by accident. Like
people wanted it.
Well, I'll say we very intentionally. I wanted to be very minimal. Like I just wanted something that felt very clean. It was natural. It was fun. You know, it was just about playing kendama and so when we thought about even like the logo placement and that kind of thing, I was like, I only want the Soul logo. It's just the icon, no text. And you know, at first we were thinking, well, nobody's gonna know what it is. Blah blah. I was like, well, eventually they will. Maybe.
Yeah, we've got to work towards that. Obviously.
Yeah, and so all we had was just the little sun, and it looked beautiful. The first sample we got with the logo fully finished on it, I was like, my heart.
Yeah, so we sampled cherry and maple. We didn't sample beach because we already knew.
And that was before the logo was finished.
Yeah, we actually. Oh, coffee's ready. Yeah,
we're getting that ready. Yeah.
Yeah, so the logo, we were just kind of like in the process of creating not only the brand name. I mean, we had several weeks and maybe even months discussing the name for Soul Kendamas and coming up with ideas for the products, and that sample didn't have the refined logo. It was just the sun.
Yeah, and I
no tomahawk.
I love looking at that. Do you have that at the house or something? Or?
Yeah, we definitely still have it.
I know that we still have it.
We could probably reference the picture.
Yeah, and I actually
first picture on Instagram.
I posted not too long ago last year referencing it, and it was just talking about how it's changed and stuff like that. But it just goes to show, like, when we were going ahead and making something, it was more about just like actually getting it made instead of having it exactly how we needed it to be from the get-go. And but when we finally get that logo, I was excited to see it. It felt good. Yeah,
it was definitely nice to the first time we had our product in our hand with our logo. I mean, it was just
and there was nothing.
Such a
we
nice
didn't add.
moment.
We've never added anything to the kin until the pro model, right?
Yeah, nothing.
Even on the flows, we were thinking about putting another logo on the reverse side of the Soul logo.
The flow logo.
Just as a flow thing, and I was like, no, we better just keep it simple. I think it was a really good decision. Okay, let's go Mexico.
Mexico.
Let's go smell it. Mmm.
It's a medium roast. It definitely, if I had to guess, I would say it's a light roast.
It's so crazy how different the smell and the taste can be too. Because what I smelled earlier was not a bad thing. It just definitely wasn't that. And
going from the
trying
beans
to describe
hitting the water.
Yeah, the water.
Nutty malted chocolate, mellow, and medium. Yeah.
Give me something. I would love malted chocolate, honestly.
Definitely, like, I feel like medium. I don't know, it says medium, but
for me, this is exactly what I want in coffee. Right here, I'm not kidding. I could drink this
that is good coffee,
on its own till the end of time. I really mean that.
I only drink black coffee unless I'm drinking some kind of espresso concoction, which to drink raw espresso is
that sounds like a disaster. Yeah.
No, it's great. It's great when
my heart couldn't hold
when you have really good espresso. That's when you know you're at a good coffee shop.
Viva la Mexico.
Mexico.
I love it, man. Man, that's good. All right, so yeah, let's move on and talk about
where we went from initially.
Yeah, so obviously starting out with natties, you haven't put a whole lot of active thought. I mean, you are, but not really. And from there, we started focusing more on like, okay, I think we want some paint and stuff. Develop our natties a little bit.
We did do a couple different natties from that.
Yeah.
What we wanted to do was the maple with the cherry stripe.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
And we didn't receive maple with cherry. We received maple with walnut, so we just rolled with it.
And that's kind of how things are sometimes. We may or may not do.
We were so new to the process, and you know, we had something in mind. We received something very different.
And at the time, we didn't have the resources to like, you know, like it's kind of like, oh, I guess this is what we're doing.
Yeah. So that steered us for a bit, and then maple and walnut really took off, and everybody started using maple and walnut around that same time.
Don't forget about the solstice.
The solstice, man. And actually, we didn't even. This wasn't even our idea. The manufacturer said, "Hey, we have this new idea.
It's
new wood."
Compressed bamboo.
Yeah, and you get it. It smells like glue, like wood glue.
It was hard as a rock. I mean, this sucker was like the most dense kendama.
They would average like anywhere from 90 to 110 grams Tama and Ken.
Yeah.
So you'd have like a 220 gram setup. It was definitely the heaviest kendama.
It was the most satisfying spike.
Oh yeah.
Ever.
And if somebody new would try it, it'd be like, wow, these things are a lot heavier than you think. And I was like, well, this one in particular, yes.
And then you hand them like a light kendama and they go,
yeah, this is, wow. Like 40 gram Tama just flops in. Yeah, so yeah, we did the beech cherry maple. The solstice is compressed bamboo. We got into the maple walnut spectrum. We started doing. We had the walnut stripe, then we had a thicker one, we had a thinner one.
Then we did the pinstripes.
We did the pinstripe up the spike. We got really creative, the walnut and beech.
That was weird.
And the idea was that, and this was probably when we first started getting into more like technical design.
Started getting crazy.
The idea is that so it's a thick walnut stripe going up the center of the spike, and on each side was the beech, but that the transition would happen under the serrato when it came up, that the spike was entirely walnut. And that was Shelton's idea.
And this looked sick. I was like, that would be really cool.
It was cool in concept.
Yeah.
It was very difficult to execute.
Very hard to do.
Consistently, and so that one was
And another thing is, too, your cups start moving down and suddenly it starts exposing like the beech and stuff like that. And, like, it was a fun idea.
Yeah, I think it's something we could revisit down the road maybe. But,
if we could cross our fingers on it all working out that way.
And it's I believe from there, did we do the pastels? That was the first time we had painted.
Yeah, so pastels, and I'll talk about the aesthetic stuff, and then you can talk about like the more technical things. And Chad, alongside the team, have worked very hard to make the technical side very good. And we just, like, more than anything else, and the aesthetics kind of come second, because you can make a good-looking kendama, but, like, what's the point?
If it doesn't play well.
Yeah, and so we always focus on the playability. But in terms of aesthetics, we wanted a solid line of just some simple, inexpensive painted kendamas. And that still played really well, of course. And so the pastels were born from that. And the pastels, when I was just looking at colors, and if you're interested in design or anything like that, then you can do this too. You can go down like color palettes on the internet and stuff like that, or get inspired by like stuff in your daily life. And I think I was just looking at colors, and man, I was just drawn to the pastels. They were just so fun. It's just so exciting. Like you look at a mint pastel.
They're not in your face either.
No. I mean, it's just inviting and like fun, and like kids see it and they just like reach for that, as opposed to like, you know, something crazy intricate or anything like that. And like I said, you look at a mint pastel or a melon pastel, you're like, it's just beautiful. Like it's just beautiful. And so like we did the pastels, and then from that point, I think. Well, we hadn't done any more painted then until...
No, so that was the first batch of painted, and it was glossy paint, which at the time was a very common...
Kind of normal, yeah.
Common paint style.
Not a lot of sticky.
The only sticky that you saw was from custom painters or like special, like one-off type deals. We were testing rubber at the time.
It was a disaster.
Was not good.
It was very bad.
Flaking, it was peeling, just like... And not even like you're playing it and it chips. Like you could literally just fingernail across the paint, it would fall off.
And we'd sample things, and I'll say that's like one of the...
Always sample before. That's
the most important thing.
Sample.
Because like if you just say, oh, this is gonna work out, and then you receive stuff and you try to sell it, and you're like, okay, well, I just made a bad decision, and you're stuck with a bunch of peeling rubber. Yeah.
And so we sampled rubber and decided, all right, let's stick with glossy, because we knew
it's at least something safe and
within the community has been
established,
a well-received thing. Up at that point now, it wouldn't fly.
It's a joke. No, I mean you wouldn't make any kind of just regular glossy painted kendama.
Yeah, from the pastels, I believe we made flows next.
Yeah, moved on to flows, and then that took a long timeline out of the product design, because we just did a whole bunch of them.
We went to a different manufacturer for those.
Yeah.
And
I'll say this real quick. So when you're working with a manufacturer, and we might need to do a full-blown episode on that kind of thing, but it's a relationship, and you develop it, and you learn about each other, and like, it sounds kind of goofy to say it like that, but like, you guys have each of your own needs, and like the way you talk about things changes, and you get on the same terms and same philosophy and that kind of thing, and then you're in sync, and that's when you're making really good stuff. And when you just like sever that just to try something else.
We didn't completely sever it. We just
no, but I mean, you know. When we did the flows, we didn't make any new kendamas for like a year, basically. I mean, we did some small like things here and there, but like.
But it was a big project that we took on, and it was kind of like revisiting.
We learned a lot.
We did some of the painted kendamas. We wanted to revisit and really hit on the natural, and
we focused on that pretty hard.
And so we produced the half splits initially with 3 wood types that we hadn't worked with before. Or I guess at the time it was the oak and the mahogany we hadn't worked with.
And then we moved on to the cups.
And walnut stripe.
I'm gonna share these guys because this was, for example, something we ended up sampling.
That's a fusion. We sampled that and we never actually produced it. So it's the walnut cups with the maple spike in the center, walnut stripe tama. There she is right there. And this setup is very beautiful. We should have made it. Maybe we will make it again.
Probably not.
And yeah, that's gonna bother me a little.
No, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah. So yeah, we might revisit that concept because that's such a beautiful kendama, and of course that's why it's displayed beautifully here behind us.
On my shelf. Yeah, and then after that, I think painted just kind of started coming back in. It felt like it was something that was getting toyed with and had seen progress, especially on the rubber side. And that's when we started looking at it more seriously. And of course, at this point, we already had a team, and we were like, you know, it'd be cool. We've already been kind of feeling like the natural thing for a while and the fun thing, and we're just thinking like, how do we share like the excitement of playing with kendama and that kind of thing through the product, and it became the vibes. You know, it's kind of like good vibes, like, you know, have a fun time, and that's of course when we got the team involved and that kind of thing. And this is when painted design, we started really developing on that. And I think as a philosophy, or like how you want to go about thinking about how you want to painted design, what we do is starting with the team. Say, okay, what characteristics kind of define you, or like your play style, or something like that? And just as an example, Cal Nasser.
Yeah,
he's from Pittsburgh.
That was one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, and so it's, you know, we got to do the black.
Go Stillers. Go Stillers.
Stillers.
Stillers, man.
Yeah, and so that was the first thought. But we knew 100%, and this is a rule we've only broken one time, I'm pretty sure, is we do not want a black colored bottom by the hole, and it's because it made it very hard to track.
Tracking is tough on dark tamas.
And so that's a rule we've not broken except for the Slayers Club.
Yeah, and it works so well because of how much the aqua or the teal contrasts with it. So in certain occasions it can work.
And another thing is, if you do
for the vibes, we were very sure.
If you 100% want to do a black bottom tama, you have to do it in a very small amount. Like if you do a half split, good luck. Yeah. If you're doing like 15 millimeters, okay, now you might be able. You just got a little thing around the bottom, then you're good, and it should be pretty visible.
Yeah, and this was about the time where tracking started to become a very
prominent staple
thing. You know, you're designing a kendama, you need good tracking on the tama, and so the vibes was a very beautiful thing, very aesthetic with very what's the word I'm looking for? Practical. It was a very practical design with aesthetics, and that
married into one.
For us, that meant for the first time where it was like
everything came together.
You have the grippy paint, good tracking, and it looks great.
And it was maple.
Actually, the first batch was elm.
That's right.
And it was just we wanted to try again a new wood type.
Yeah.
And it was cool. A lot of people liked it, but
it was actually the bleached elm. Right.
No, actually, the bleached elm was in the Ken only options. This was the dark elm.
Right.
But the dark elm, there were like some issues, like the cups might slip too far down.
Yeah.
They were kind of not really like weak, but they just compared to maple were not durable.
Maple just sets this bar like right here, and then suddenly it's like okay.
And so we tried with the elm initially, and it was cool.
And then
back to maple, and since then the vibes have been exclusively on.
And like people were paying more attention to the playability of our stuff at that point because we really like stepped it up a notch and thought more. We were just extremely thoughtful about it. And after that, I'm trying to remember the timeline. I don't know.
I guess we should go back and the flows were very thoughtful, obviously.
Obviously, but I'm talking about. Obviously, I'm still talking about the painted stuff.
Yeah, and we forgot to mention the increase in size of the flows, which was like a really, and that's why that whole project we stepped away from that first main. We did something very different. It was pretty much a clean 5% increase all around
on everything.
On everything. And
instead of choosing
it was the first time we had a design exclusive to us. True. Because we had like 3 or 4 options that we chose from before, but anyone could choose those options. And this really when we went to the flows and created the 5% bigger, it was us. Had our own thing for the first time, and from that, we went to the vibes, and then
and then I guess after the vibes we went into the
we did
Pioneers. That's right, which was the first sticky paint.
The first sticky paint that we had,
and then that set the standard. See, the whole way we're kind of figuring out exactly what we need to do and what our style and the brand was. And so when it came to the rubber paint, we had our set of rules, and we knew exactly what we needed. And now
got the team involved heavily with the
that's right. And then after this, the sticky was the first kind of foray back into a paint that was not rubber, because we had the glossy at the very beginning, and in our heads, if it could have been sticky at the time, we would have taken it, but it was not going to happen. And so I think we even sampled one, and it was just like, basically it was like glossy. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was not that different.
And so the sticky, and we got it back, and it was incredible. Like, it was, I was like, what is going? I was like, I could like put my hand up and just like hang like that. I mean, it was really, really, really sticky.
Gotta get those lunars.
So we had a quick little Pioneers run.
The great thing about the sticky too, it was the most durable paint.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Beyond the rubber and the glossy, and it was just everything you wanted in a paint.
The Pioneers, in terms of aesthetics too, we were wanting to do more of a package deal. We did the bags with the vibes, and we were like, man, we need to do something that just has more value to people. And so we added pins and stickers.
And the bags it was the first time we had bags that matched in color to the Thomas.
In color. And
since then we've made the vibes.
And it was a thematic thing. Like, everything felt like it went together in terms of like the stickers and the pins and how it all felt, and it also played really good. And so we hadn't returned back to those, and as a matter of fact, we hadn't made anything sticky on that regard until I think Kevin's Pro Mod. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Kevin's Pro Model, and then from there we've had several collaborations.
And of course, I don't have to talk much about the Katie Pro Mod, because I think I've mentioned in a past episode, but also because Kevin designed all of that.
Kevin has a full video on that design,
his Pro Mod release, and that was kind of fun because I think we were like very basic stuff. We had our rules in the back of our head, and we've not talked about it ever with anyone. But Kevin came with us with the design, and in my head I was just like, check it. Okay, yeah, we're good.
Kevin's, we had it nailed
It's like,
down.
it was easy. I mean, I was like happy with it. It was a good design, and like everything else was excellent, and so we were good to go. And then
of course, in previous episodes we talked about how Kevin had gone through several.
He's an idea man.
He's gone through several renditions. He's an idea man, and so he when the time came for us to make him a pro model, he was ready.
And now we've been super explorative with our designs and that kind of thing. We're still maintaining our rules if we can help it, and we dove into collabs. Loved the collabs, and that's really great because it involves the community in a way that just regular product creation doesn't. Regular just engagement doesn't. You can really get into the community. And I think everybody's kind of gets behind that, and you get other influences that you might not normally have. And then we've experimented with the opposite day cups, so
the painted cups, which we released initially 2018. Opposite day was a really fun, creative way, and that was actually Lyndon's idea.
On opposite day, not the cups.
To release, it was my idea. It was like, sometimes you just get into a really good creative space. You're sitting there and you're just holding a kendama, and of course everyone wants to create something new, something different, something unique. And I was just sitting here like, take the tama to the cups, and I'm skirt on the sticky paint. And then I'm like, what if it was just the paint inside the cups and there was the natty ball? And I was like, oh, that would be an interesting concept. And I was like, holding the can, I was like, if you're holding the can, it feels natty. Holding the tama, it feels natty, but you pull up a lunar and it
feels painted.
Sticks like it's a painted kendama. I'm like, that'd be a cool concept. And I was like, well, I guess we'd need some form of tracking, because good practical design, you need tracking.
That's right.
And so the Tama was like, the burned lines are something people have been doing
It's
now.
kind of trendy, kind of cool.
Yeah, and so it's like, all right, like we can try that with the Natty Tama, the 2 horizontal lines, like that same thickness. And of course you see we sampled on the, this was a sample of the sole shape, which we can talk about that here in a minute.
That could be its own episode.
Well. Yeah, it really could. But yeah, the burn lines right there, that was when we were creating the sole shape. We made that at RWB. But those kind of lines from even the sampling process translated over to the painted cups. And we talked about sampling, how important it is. I was getting ready to sample, and I knew everybody on the team would want one. And and everyone on the team wouldn't want just the rubber cups. They'd want the rubber and the sticky.
Yep.
I was like, man, like if we're producing for the team, and then like I want them, Shelton probably wants them as well. I'm like, that's at least 10 of each. That's 20. It was like, might as well just do a full production run. I say full production. It was 50 of each,
yeah,
which isn't like that's not like this huge production, right? It's 50 of the sticky cups. 50 of the rubber cups.
And I thought he was crazy. I was like, man, that's actually kind of a lot.
Like, what are you doing, dude?
I was like, because you know, we talk about always sampling, you know, pretty hard on it before.
It went so against what we like our typical like standard, but I had a gut feeling, and I just like, you know, when you want something, you just want to get it done, do it. I just kind of went for it.
He sent it, and I was, and it kind of like let me know, like we had very briefly discussed it, like, hey, here's the idea, and then he came at me like the next day, he's like, okay, it's done. And I was like, what?
And when we were talking, I might have been like, yeah, I want to sample these things. He goes, you're sampling 100 of them? Like, what?
Yeah, sample. I'm gonna go sample the buffet if you don't mind.
And so, 2018 Battle of the Border. We gave them to our team and like, hey, what do you think? And like Alex Mitchell's trying, he's like, oh man, this thing is like, he's like, this thing is great. And so it was well received initially. The team,
I was betting,
the team was like kind of like, oh, this seems kind of weird, like,
yeah.
Then they played it, they're like, okay.
See, I was honestly betting that the sticky cups would be the most popular, because in my head I'm thinking, okay, yeah, sticky Dama, you don't have as much surface area, so maybe like the hard contact would be really good. And I think what is true is that the rubber tends to be more popular.
It's weird because so we've now done 3 releases. We did the initial one on opposite day. We did ash over the summer because we want to keep each batch different.
A little different, yeah.
That first one we want to keep true to that first one. Second one we did ash wood.
That's right.
Rubber and rubber the first 2. On this last one, sticky sold out before the rubber, and like rubber was literally like 15 or so behind.
Yeah. I think another thing.
And I was like, okay, like sticky now, because people have tried them.
I think what people want to do is kind of test them with different Tamas. Like they've got their own Tamas to play with, and in some ways it kind of clashes. Like 2 sticky does not seem to work very well, but 2 rubber has potential.
2 rubber has potential. Rubber sticky is not a good mix on either end. It's another
no surprises there.
People are sampling setups with the Kens, the painted cups.
Yeah. Do you want to kind of move into talk about like the technical stuff that you guys have modified, and you can even talk about RWB or something if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. So initially, when we were producing kendamas with our first manufacturer, they gave us, I think it was 3 different options. There was like a very slim, a medium, and then like this larger, more refined. Yeah, now obviously the cups were all the same size, but it was kind of like
you could almost use it as a hammer. Like you could hold the spike and
features on the kendama were more defined or
emphasized.
And so I think we initially started with the like thinner, and then we decided the medium, and we just kind of like transitioned. It wasn't a very like this is a new shape because it was
just
something.
Kind of played with it.
Yeah, and so we settled with that medium shape for a while. And then we ventured onto the flows, and our idea there was just creating something unique to us. We came up with the concept. At the time, the little bit bigger was around, and it was bigger than the KWC box. And then there was the Musso, which was just like, 0.5% bigger.
The Viking.
The Tama was, the Viking was this like bigger than a jumbo. Sorry, smaller than a jumbo, bigger than a little bit bigger. It was a lot of bit bigger, I guess. And so there were a few kendamas that existed that were bigger than the traditional kendama. And so we wanted to create something bigger than the Musso, but smaller than the little bit bigger. And we came up with the Flow. And the idea with the Flow, everything's scaled up 5%. Pretty simple.
And at the time, I feel like we weren't probably thinking hard enough about if that was a good enough idea. And we liked the idea of it getting bigger because I loved doing gunslingers and just kind of feeling it out and that kind of thing. And I think we agreed, like, hey, it would be kind of a fun idea to make it bigger. It seems like a good idea. But, like, thinking back, if we focused more on, like, the cups and, like, kept a thinner handle, and we're very more cautious about, like, weight distribution, which is something we hadn't really talked about yet, then we would have really hit it out of the park. Because the Flows had a little bit of a lunar issue, and I think it kind of hurt it a little bit. But
yeah, not only was it natty, it was like finished with a polish, so it was kind of slick. And the big focus for us was creating something unique to us, which we nailed it. Something beautiful, which they're so beautiful. Nailed it, and that's what we did. And so going from the Flow, what we took, learning steps from there. We knew we wanted to create something else, refine what
super fleshed out, like, idea process, because that was more of a short thing.
Yeah, so we wanted to refine the Flow in a way where we kept that increase in size, but got our lunar balance back.
Yeah.
Got all those important aspects back, and I'm actually just going to take this down to reference right here. And so, yeah, again, this could be a whole nother video in itself. We went to RWB, and we wanted to work with them on producing our own shape. We came in with several ideas. It was Shelton, Lyndon, Kevin, and I. So we had 2 pros on the team, and Lyndon had just got announced the day before.
He was pumped.
Which is really cool, and we just dove immediately into that process. And this was right before the Kevin DeSoto Pro model, and so we're like, Kevin, this shape is going to be on your first Pro model, and he's just all in on this. Like, so we each came in with ideas to improve the flow, and this is what we came up with, the Soul Shape. And a few things off the bat, we decided to keep that larger Tama size because we got a lot of good feedback. People like, I have bigger hands. This feels good in my hands, and we think with the increase in cup size, we wanted to increase the Tama size, the surface area increases, and so that was something that we wanted to keep. One thing that we did do, and this is a very interesting detail you might not notice until you look very closely, but the flow was increased 5%, which means everything was scaled up. With the Soul Shape, we scaled up the cups, but we took the spike down, so it's actually shorter. And again, this helps with that distribution of weight. You're going to get better lunar balance on a kin that's shorter because the taller it gets, the more weight is further away from that central part of the kin right there. And so by making it shorter, we increased the lunar balance alone right there, which was huge. We actually did boost the bottom cup larger, so even though the cups were scaled, the bottom cup was scaled even larger because lighthouses are such a staple in kendama tricks. So many combos involve a lighthouse or some form of the bottom cup. From there, the serrato, and this is a really interesting aspect. A lot of people recently have kind of talked about it. Whenever the Tama sits on the spike, you notice there's a gap on the small cup where it rests to the side, kind of sideways.
As opposed to the Tama fitting perfectly in between the two cups.
Which is something you actually see traditionally on most kendamas. There might be a few that are the same.
It definitely looks a little bit better, but
this looks It looks better, but on the Soul Shape, the reason why it does that, there's more weight on the big cup side. If you were to look on the computer at this arch, it's actually 2 different arches, and so the small cup cuts in more and it locks in those slingers. Your fingers are right in there. It's a nook. On the big cup side, it's more broad, and this puts more weight towards the big cup, again for lunar balance, and that was something that we were really mindful of.
Super clutch.
And even though your Tama doesn't sit flush on that spike, your lunars are sitting so much nicer on the Tama. And so
worth it.
You're kind of taking these little things, and you have to weigh them out, which is more effective towards the goal, which is more valuable. And another very notable thing we had very flat cups on the flow, and most kendama designs have these very flat cups right here. Our idea was to, again, bring more weight for lunar balance, so we rounded the cups off. And again, it's a very subtle change, but the idea is that every bit of weight we can bring to the Serato,
help with the playability.
we can help with that lunar balance. And so this all around was the creation of the soul shape, and
all done in one day.
we did it. Yeah, it was like an 8-hour session. We took the bottom cup and we made it more deep. On the flow is more shallow, and so again, taking weight away from that back end without the lunar balance hole. And at the time, that wasn't a very common feature in kendama. It was something that Mugen Muso initially brought on. But all of those things together are what we were focusing on. We took this idea of something unique and beautiful, and we brought very practical kendama design aspects to that, and came up with the soul shape. And so that whole process was just
we've made minor changes
amazing
since.
But we've just really hit at creating something that not only unique to us, but plays really well, looks really great as well.
And then we've done minor changes to the bevel since.
Yeah, and so the bevel, initially with RWB, we were sampling something that was a little more shallow, and it was good for stalls. It really matched the rounded cups on top, but the flow had a more deep bevel, and that was something we liked from the flow, that we lost the soul shape. We brought it back, and we've really, even just from the first batch of the soul shape, which was on the pastels with sticky paint, that was kind of an ode to the first painted series, and that was something we were very mindful of. Despite not having that tracking, it was something nostalgic and something very simple and basic that we wanted to introduce the soul shape with.
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of like going back to our roots. And so from there, we've kind of refined the bevel a lot, and Lyndon has taken that refinement, and he's refined it even more. This very deep bevel, the all-star bevel, and that's something exciting. That
it just sounds so
the
bad.
All-star bevel, it's sick. No, it's something I love. I've been playing the All-Star bevel.
No, I mean it's really good.
Oh, you said bad. It was like, it's so bad. It's great.
Yeah. No, this is bad.
Yeah.
Isn't that good?
Yeah, and so we're still mindful of the shape and changes and thinking
pretty
forward.
Happy with them. I mean,
yeah, pretty happy with them. I think down the road we will probably venture on with more shapes, and it's always a conversation.
If you were making a prediction of like what you think the next, obviously we've seen a lot of stuff happen to the base cup in the past couple of years, which is interesting to me, and it's always the playability. And so what do you think, if you were to make a prediction today, what do you think like some kind of change that would occur
down the road in kendama in general, or just with our kendamas?
I mean both.
It's so interesting. I know Yumu does some crazy stuff just because they're also a manufacturing company themselves. Again, like you want an all-around kendama, and what that requires is good lunar balance, good stalls.
That's a funny idea. Let's stop right there. Because what if, like, in 2 years you've got a specialty dama, and it just depends on the competition, but like say you've got a dama who's really good for like, I want to use more advanced tricks, but I'm struggling. Like, you got a really good like lunar dama, but you've also got something that's amazing for like
wings,
juggles, or like you just don't like, you have a specialty dama. That'd be crazy. That would be
interesting.
That's my prediction.
I know yo-yo players will show up to a competition with like a briefcase essentially of yo-yos, and they'll have maybe like 10 that they bring to a competition. And kendama players,
they do it anyway.
Bring 10. Like I might bring 2. I definitely used to bring like 10, and you only use 1 or 2.
Wow.
There's no need for 10.
Yeah.
But maybe down the road,
2 years from now,
maybe down the road you have your lunar kendama, your bird kendama, your spacewalk kendama, your juggle kendama. You know.
Luckily, a lot of those
your yank kendama for that
dama.
yank competition at MKO.
All my damas are yank damas.
And so that is an interesting
What's your prediction?
concept.
I need something strong.
The base cut's been changing a lot recently with different creative, GT with the booty hole. You've got analog with the, I can't remember the name of it. I want to call it the dome because it looks like a dome. The
dome.
portal is what they've called it. Lunar balance holes, like Chrome has like the huge hole that you fit your thumb and a half at the bottom. Go. What is my guess?
If you're just feeling bold.
Feeling bold.
You'll just wake up one day and you'll know.
Yeah, I think we'll see a big change in either the slip ring. This area has a lot of different possibilities, and the Serato is going to change a lot more as well. I think.
How?
Ben Harold was the first to really beef up a Serato, and it's almost beefed up to the point where it looks unrefined. But the idea for him was just these
hammer,
fat masher, this lunar stall machine, and he created a lunar stall machine.
Yeah.
But we haven't really seen any other Serato. Our Seratos are pretty beefy. Probably the next best for a competition improved kendama as far as beef goes, but Seratos are going to change, and I think slip ring, those two. I can't tell you anything specifically.
Are we keeping the spike tips like this, or are we going to go...
Spike tips, perfect. That's a great spike tip.
It just looks nice.
Bullet tip, not the way to go.
I think bullet tip with the all-star bevel would be really good. Personal opinion.
An interesting concept. Actually, I think this setup has a bullet tip. Is that more rounded, again, looking like a bullet? Yeah, look at it.
I mean,
so
this is also a
comment below, bullet tip or, I guess... pointed tip, is that a good name? There's really not a name
flat
for
tip. Alex Mitchell can land so many quarter balances.
Three types. You've got the pointed tip, the bullet tip, and the flat tip, aka the Alex Mitchell spike. So yeah, that's my prediction. The slip ring or the Serato is going to change a lot in the future.
Yeah.
For us, we're always thinking of, what's the next thing.
Always testing, always experimenting, and that's the most important thing for us is experimenting.
Yeah, sampling.
You can't know until
if you get a gut feeling, you might order 100. You never know. What we have coming up, more collaborations for sure, because the process of working with someone on an idea, coming together and creating something has been really great.
Yeah.
Getting more people involved with something they might not have the opportunity to do otherwise. I know Stefan, who, Slayers Club, which that collaboration has been really successful. When we initially started the design, he came to me actually with the idea for the collaboration, the design, because I was like, hey man, we want to collaborate. I can't remember if you hit him up or I hit him up. I think you came up with the idea to collaborate with them.
Slayers Club. I liked Slayers Club.
We contacted him, and he was like, I have an idea. He was ready to go immediately.
Dude had been dreaming of it.
But he was so eager to create a kendama, never had the opportunity, and that opportunity arose, he was ready to go.
Yeah.
So more collaborations in the future for sure.
One thing we haven't seen change a whole lot, it's kind of funny, is the strings. And I think for us, and don't quote me on this, but I think these are the same strings we started with from the very beginning. Maybe just a little longer.
They're I know when I started playing with soul kendamas from back in the day, the Azoras, TK16s had different strings. The Zins from Konamiko had different strings. These are round. And
yeah, that's right.
Zin strings were thin and flat.
Yeah.
Azora strings were definitely the best strings. They were flat, but they were really, really high quality. And they had that waxed tip. That way you didn't need to use the straining tool. You could just go straight into the kendama. TK16, horrible string. It was again kind of flat, soft, but it had just a frayed end. It would take about 30 minutes to string a kendama for a new player.
Yeah.
And so actually in middle school and high school, people would come to me, hey, can you string my kendama? Because I got really good at it. And so they would bring me their kendama to string. But yeah, these strings are the same from when we first started producing them.
And then the bearing change happened. Was that the guy from BLK?
Yeah, the guy from BLK Kendama.
It's a really good idea.
He started a new thing called Dama Mods, where they had, what did he call them? Dama mods. Dama
We're
bearings.
talking about the bearings? It must have been.
He came up, there was another name for the...
Spinners.
Spinners, yeah. Oh, that's so sick. Like, the whole concept was really dope.
It was a cool idea. It was just that it was so good that everybody had to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and initially people were, you know, it was like a collaboration, like buying the spinners and putting on. At some point, it's streamlined and like,
yeah.
if your kendama doesn't have a spinner now or like a metal bearing bead,
stream trouble.
It's just like the tracking on the Tama. If you don't have the bearing,
it's a
don't have
staple.
the tracking, it's a staple now.
Yeah.
But the strings right now, you've pretty much got the round string,
nylon.
Which is this. You have the Sweets Premiums, that very soft silk strings. And then you have the Lovely Knots, which is...
weird.
If you know, it's not weird, dude. Nick, Zach, Lyndon, Zach Magnuson, like, these guys that are podium finish in kendama.
It just drives me crazy. It's just, it just strikes that little, like, that shouldn't be that way.
They, like, go on eBay or, like, Amazon and buy this spool from some crap. Like, you know, there's some, like... some grandma that's selling Lovely Knots and just like craft store on Amazon, and all these kendama players have now picked up on this. It's thinner. I wouldn't say it's more durable. We don't have issues with kendama string durability.
Yeah, not really.
I've played kendamas for like 6 years and the strings never broke. But it gives you the ability to make the string as long or as short as you want, and Lovely Knots has become a staple now in kendama. Like, I'm pretty sure the Kendama World Cup, Nick Gallagher had Lovely Knot string. Maybe that's a factor. Maybe you need to use.
That's probably it. We need to ban Lovely Knots.
No, man, that's the next generation of string. Maybe is within spools that we carry and
maybe so
adjust.
That'd be funny. You just attach it onto your belt and you just pull the string.
Who needs strings? Your bearing beads in your that little pocket in your pants. You know that really small one.
Yeah.
Bearing beads.
Bearing beads. Yeah, we've hit a lot of good stuff. I think like we really explained like a lot of the thought process behind everything. Hit some good history. Talked about like how we go about making the stuff we do, and like
things to keep
a little
in
insight
mind
to the
when
future,
we're designing.
little fun story and stuff like that. So I think
there's a few more. So in the future collaborations, we want to do more kin only options on the website, which we'll be doing soon. We like the ability to have different wood types, which is something
instead of doing a full run of something, you
Yeah.
can have a little choice here and there, especially in the soul shape.
Yeah, beech, maple, ash, walnut, rosewood, purple heart.
Maybe more.
Maybe more. Wait to find out. Mid-March, late March.
That's another thing, is that when you have an idea, the product creation process is very long.
It is a long
It's
time.
extremely long.
Yeah.
Because even after you finalized exactly what you want to make, it still might take another month to get it all created. And so you're talking about, that's what's funny, is whenever you have two kendamas come out that look kind of similar or something like that, people like, they copied each other, and it's kind of like, well, this is something that's been worked on for 4 months.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's not exactly...
I think the soul shape from like being in RWB to full production was 6 months, 6 or 7 months, and that's half a year, guys, like working on a shape.
You hope that nothing major changes while you're working on getting your new shape out.
Something like that. And of course, if after you have like the shape refined,
you can still
the paint, you know, coming up with the new Tama designs, that process might be between 2 and 4 months versus the
the paint's a little shorter.
Versus the
full-blown shape
6 to 7 months for, you know, producing a whole new kendama.
Yeah. Shout out RWB for helping speed that process up.
Eric Weens killed that.
Major key.
Kevin and
Major key.
killed that.
Yeah.
You and I killed that. It was great, man.
Yeah.
Like, that whole process. So.
Well, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. If we didn't answer any questions that you might have wanted answered, then
comment below.
hit it below. Thanks for joining us in the conversation. We will see you guys next week.